If grocery shopping feels harder to trust in 2026, you're not imagining it. A lot of people are walking into the same stores they have used for years and coming out with a strange feeling. The cart costs more, but it seems to hold less. The shelf looks familiar, but the item is gone. Or it is back in a new package with a smaller size, a different recipe, or a higher price that only makes sense after you do the math at home. That is what this video is really about. Not panic, not stockpiling, not rumor. It is about disappearing value. Because the biggest grocery problem right now is not just that prices are high. It is that grocery trips are becoming less predictable. Items are quietly changing, shrinking, getting replaced, or slipping out of stores without much notice. And if you do not know what to look for, you can end up paying the same, or more, for less. So in the next few minutes, we are going to go through the warning signs, the patterns behind these changes, and the grocery items and categories that shoppers should watch closely in 2026. Then I will give you a simple checklist you can use on your next store run so you can protect your money without turning every shopping trip into a stress test. Start with this. When people say an item is disappearing, that does not always mean it is gone everywhere. Sometimes it means the store delisted it. Sometimes it means the package got smaller. Sometimes it means the recipe changed but the brand name stayed the same. And sometimes it means a store brand replaced a familiar product, but the replacement does not perform the same way. That distinction matters. A product can vanish from one chain and still be sitting in another. A package can look almost identical and still give you less food. A label can stay the same while the formula changes just enough to affect taste, texture, or how far it goes in a household. If you only shop by memory, you can miss all of that. One of the first red flags is the shelf itself. A lot of shoppers notice a gap in one spot and think, maybe they are just out today. Sometimes that is true. But if you see the same gap for a few visits in a row and the shelf tag changes, that is a sign the store may be reducing space or quietly moving away from that item. Look at the tag, not just the product. A new price label, a different placement, or a clearance sticker can all tell you something before the average shopper notices. A clearance sticker is especially important. It does not always mean a product is bad. It often means the store is making room for a replacement, a new size, or a different version. That is the moment when a familiar item can disappear without any big announcement. Another clue is a new package design. Companies know that if they change the box, the bottle, or the bag, most people will notice the color before they notice the ounces. That is why the package can look refreshed while the contents quietly get smaller. If the front looks familiar, but the back shows less weight, fewer servings, or a shorter net amount, that is not a redesign for your benefit. That is the kind of change that can cost you more per meal without feeling like a price increase at first glance. And it can be especially easy to miss when the item is one you buy on autopilot, the kind you toss into the cart because you already know where it sits on the shelf. That brings us to the first group of items people are seeing change more often in 2026. Staple foods with package size cuts. This includes things like cereal, crackers, chips, shredded cheese, coffee, baking ingredients, and frozen basics. These are the products that households reach for over and over again. Because they sell consistently, stores and manufacturers know shoppers are less likely to notice a small cut in size than they are to notice a sharp jump in sticker price. That is why the unit price matters more than the shelf price. A box might be the same price as last month, but contain fewer ounces. A bag might look like a better deal until you see that the serving count dropped. A bottle might still fit in your hand, but the ounces are down enough that the cost per use has crept up. If you have not checked the unit price in a while, this is where the hidden loss often lives. The practical move is simple. Before you put a staple in the cart, compare the unit price, not just the big number on the tag. If the package changed, check the net weight. If the servings changed, check whether your household will still get the same value out of it. Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it is not worth it anymore. And when you are shopping for a family, a few ounces here and there can turn into a real difference over the course of a month. One smaller box may not seem dramatic. Several smaller boxes, week after week, absolutely add up. The second group to watch is store brand replacements. Private label items used to be a reliable way to stretch a budget, and sometimes they still are. But in 2026, a lot of shoppers are noticing that store brands are not always the same product they used to be. A retailer can switch suppliers. The formula can change, the texture can change, the size can change, even the way the item cooks or lasts can change. So if you buy a store brand because you trust it, that trust needs to be earned again when the packaging changes. A good example is any item where the store brand has suddenly moved locations, changed packaging, or started tasting slightly different. That does not automatically mean it is bad. It means you need to recheck it as if it were a new product. If it costs less but performs worse, you have not really saved money. You have just moved the cost into waste, disappointment, or having to buy something else later. That is one of the hardest grocery truths for households to accept. Cheap is not always value. Value is whether the item does the job you needed it to do. And there is another piece here that people do not always factor in: the time cost of a bad replacement. If you buy a store brand item and it does not work as well, you may have to make a second trip, use more product to get the same result, or throw it away. That is why the lowest shelf price is not the same thing as the best deal. A replacement that fails in the middle of the week is more expensive than a product that costs a little more, but works the first time. The third category is convenience food and prepared items. These are the foods that save time. Pre-cut fruit, microwavable meals, salad kits, deli sides, ready-to-heat proteins, and snack packs. In a busy household, these can be useful, but they are also where value disappears fast because you are paying for labor, packaging, and convenience on top of the food itself. When prices are under pressure, these items often become the first place where the math turns bad. You might see a tray that used to feed two now barely feeds one. You might notice fewer pieces in a snack box. You might buy a prepared item and realize it is gone in one meal, while a basic ingredient would have stretched much farther. That is not a moral failure, it is a design choice in the food system. Convenience is priced to feel easy in the moment, not necessarily efficient for the week. And this category has another trap. Waste can hide the real cost. A salad kit that goes limp before you finish it is not just a bad purchase. It is money you paid and food you did not use. A ready-made side dish that gets forgotten in the fridge is not a time saver. It is an extra loss. So the question is not whether you should avoid all convenience foods. The question is whether this one still earns its place in your cart. If it saves you time and gets used, it may still be worth it. If it repeatedly ends up half-used or thrown out, the convenience is becoming expensive. Now let's talk about why these changes happen. Stores do not usually wake up and decide to annoy shoppers for fun. They respond to costs, margins, shipping, supplier changes, and shelf performance. If an item is expensive to stock, slow to move, or too thin on profit, it becomes vulnerable. If a retailer can make room for something that sells faster, they often will. If a supplier changes ingredients or packaging to control costs, the item you remember may not come back in the same form. That is why some products seem to vanish without a dramatic national headline. The grocery system is not one giant switch. It is a chain of smaller decisions made by manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. One store cuts a line. Another reduces shelf space. A third swaps in a house brand. Suddenly, the item that used to be easy to find becomes something you have to search for. Seasonality can add another layer. Some products are naturally harder to find at certain times of year, and that can get mistaken for a larger shortage. Logistics can also make a product look gone in one area while it is still normal in another. Shipping delays, regional distribution decisions, and local demand all matter. That is why it helps not to jump straight to panic when you see an empty spot. Check another aisle. Check another store. Check back on a different day. Not every missing item is a crisis. Sometimes it is a local reset, a supplier shift, or a temporary delay. But the bigger pattern is still real. The grocery shelf is becoming a place where change is hidden in plain sight. And that brings us to a mid-video reality check. Take a second and ask yourself this. When was the last time you actually checked whether a product was still giving you the same value it used to? Not the same brand, not the same color package, the same value. That is the real issue in 2026. A lot of shoppers are still using old trust in new conditions. They are assuming the item they bought for years is the same item because the label looks familiar. But the grocery aisle now rewards people who verify, not because they are being paranoid, because they are being careful. And careful is a smart place to be. If you want to keep control, here is the buying rule that matters most. Compare size, not packaging. The package is designed to catch your eye. The size is what feeds the household. Look at ounces, pounds, grams, servings, and count. If the package is taller but lighter, that is a warning. If the recipe changed, check the ingredient list. If the item is a store brand and you used to trust it blindly, recheck it like it is new. If the shelf tag or the location changed, assume something is different until you confirm it. That is especially important with items that seem almost identical side by side. Two boxes can look nearly the same and still have a meaningful difference in weight or quality. Two frozen meals can have similar packaging but very different serving sizes. Two bottles of the same sauce can differ enough that one no longer works as well for the meals your household actually makes. The next step is to think in terms of use, not impulse. If an item is smaller but your household still uses it efficiently, maybe it stays on the list. If it costs more per serving and creates more waste, skip it. If a replacement brand does the same job, fine. If it does not, do not let the store talk you into paying for a weaker version just because it is sitting in the same spot. That is where a lot of waste happens. Not from buying food, from buying the wrong version of food. One of the most useful habits you can build is a short trusted list. Not a giant spreadsheet. Just a small list of items that consistently give you good value in your household. Basic staples, a few frozen items, a few pantry items, a few backup meals. Keep an eye on those. When one changes, you will know quickly. And if you keep your receipts, you can compare what the same item cost last month or last season without relying on memory. Receipts are powerful because memory gets fuzzy fast. You may think that brand used to be cheap. The receipt says otherwise. You may think the package stayed the same. The unit price tells a different story. You may think you are just paying more because everything is expensive. Sometimes that is true, but sometimes there is a second layer. Less product, different formula, worse deal. This is why the grocery trip should be treated like a value check, not a loyalty test. You do not owe a product your loyalty if it stopped earning its place. That also helps with the quiet substitution problem, which is one of the easiest traps to miss. A brand can change suppliers. A store can switch to a different manufacturer behind the same label. A product can disappear for a few weeks and return with a new texture or different ingredients. Unless you're checking carefully, you may not realize the thing you used to buy is not quite the same anymore. If you notice a favorite item seems off, do a quick ingredient check. If the label changed, that is not just cosmetic. If the serving size changed, that affects the math. If the performance changed, whether that is taste, cooking, or how long it lasts, your household now has to decide whether it still belongs in the cart. Sometimes the answer will be no, and that is okay. In fact, that is one of the smartest responses you can make. A lot of people feel stuck with a product because it used to be their default. But defaults are not permanent. If the item no longer delivers the value it once did, it is allowed to lose its spot. Your shopping list should serve your household, not the other way around. Now let's clear up one more thing. An empty shelf does not always mean a national shortage. That matters because some shoppers see a gap and immediately assume the worst. Sometimes they are looking at one store's ordering decision. Sometimes the product is seasonal. Sometimes it is in the back, not on the floor. Sometimes the retailer simply decided the shelf space was better used for another item. And sometimes the product really is harder to find, but only regionally. So if something is missing, the calm response is better than the emotional one. Check a different store if you need it. Check a different aisle. Check the unit price on an alternative. If it is a true household staple, keep a note of the best replacement you found. If it is only a nice to have, let it go. This is the part that protects your budget most. Not chasing every missing item, not hoarding. Just staying flexible enough that a store decision does not control your spending. In practical terms, flexibility means you can swap brands, sizes, or formats when the math stops working. It means you are not locked into one package just because it used to be your favorite. And in a year like 2026, that flexibility is worth money. Now, what should smart shoppers do next? First, keep a short value list. That means the items your household actually uses well and that still give you a fair deal. Keep it small enough to remember. The point is not to build inventory. The point is to know what good value looks like in your own kitchen. Second, use receipts to watch for drift. A product that rises slowly over time is easy to miss until you compare old and new totals. If a favorite item starts crossing a line you are not comfortable with, you will know because you tracked it. Third, treat substitutions carefully. If the package changed, the formula may have changed. If the store brand changed supplier, the quality may not be identical. If it tastes different or performs worse, do not force it to be your new normal. Fourth, only keep backup items for things your household genuinely uses. That means no fear buying. No emergency piles of random products. Just a modest cushion for true essentials. A calm backup is different from panic stocking. One protects you. The other can create waste. Finally, think about what problem each product solves. Does it save time? Does it stretch into multiple meals? Does it actually satisfy your household? Does it cost less per use than the alternative? If the answer is yes, it may still be worth buying. If not, the store has probably already told you what you need to know through the price, the size, or the substitution. Let's bring the whole pattern together. In 2026, grocery shoppers are dealing with a system that hides change behind familiar packaging. Some items are delisted quietly. Some are shrunk. Some are reformulated. Some are replaced by a store brand that is not quite the same. Some disappear only in certain stores or certain regions. And some are not really gone at all. They are simply no longer worth buying at the old price for the amount you get. That is the real consumer crisis. Not that everything is vanishing at once, but that disappearing value is becoming normal enough that people have to become detectives just to shop well. The good news is that once you know the pattern, it is easier to spot. Look at the shelf tag. Check the net weight. Read the ingredient list. Compare unit prices. Watch for substitutions. And keep your own short list of items that still earn their place in your kitchen. That does not mean living in fear of the grocery store. It means walking in with your eyes open. And that is where your control comes back. The next time you are in the aisle, remember this simple checklist. Compare size, not packaging. Read the label before trusting the brand. Watch for new formulas and new suppliers. Check the unit price every time something looks different. And do not buy fear. Buy what actually solves a real household need. If you use that approach, you stop being a passive target for hidden changes and start becoming a smarter shopper again. And if this video helped you make sense of what you have been seeing in the grocery aisle, stay with this channel. We keep breaking down the consumer traps that make everyday spending feel harder than it should, and we keep it calm, practical, and usable.